Lounge. We're currently kicking back and doing Shabbos the way it was meant to be done. If you'd like to join us, take a load off and put your feet up. No need to put your name on the wait list. You're already a VIP. Oh, and you might want to hold on to your jacket. It's pretty chill in here.
All right. Welcome to episode 6. Episode 6 is a continuation of episode 5, in which we were talking about blessings and curses, and we were discussing how our lives are blessed when we follow the law and delight in His Word, and how curses come along and natural consequences come from not following His laws and decrees and the things that He asks us to do. So thank you once again for listening, and I hope you enjoy the show. As always, we ask you to comment and subscribe and share on social media. We also have a Twitter account at Sabbath Lounge in Twitter, and we welcome your questions and comments.
Yes.
Well, I do want to go back to this thing you're talking about on the law. You know, growing up in my tradition, it was always taught that the law was this bad thing. It's bad. We don't want to go to the law. We don't want to be legalistic. We don't want to be caught up in all these rules and right and wrong. And we also got hung up in my tradition with being focused on for lack of a better term today, but you know, people call it the New Testament, but it's got a different name. It's like the Brit Hadashah, is that what it is?
Yeah, the Brit Hadashah. I think something
like that.
I can't remember right
and now. But you know, the New Testament was the focus of our background, and they just wanted to eliminate the Old Testament. Like, we don't have time for that. There's nothing in there we want to go back. That's just the law. That's that old book. It's kind of dusty. We got to blow off the dust of this thing before we open it up. It doesn't really apply. We're just going to focus on the New Testament. You got to learn Greek. I went to, a Christian school, and Greek. It was Greek. Very little Hebrew was taught or promoted. It was all about learning the Greek. And I think that we missed the mark a little bit about the law, because there was something I wanted to say a while ago. It reminded me of the story where I believe it's Joshua takes the people out between Mount, I think it's called Ebal or something, and it's like this little valley between these 2 points, and he has the people stand in this amphitheater, and he tells them, choose this day who you're going to serve. And he talks about blessings and curses. And actually, I think choose this day, that's a different scripture. But this particular one, he uses these 2 mountain peaks to illustrate, if you go this way, you're choosing blessings. You're walking in the law, walking in Torah. And if you go against the Torah, you go against the law, you're choosing curses. And I think in a lot of ways, that's the decision. We choose the law, we choose blessings, we go curses when we go against the law. And I think there's simple, basic things like we talked about the 10 Commandments, and it talks about keep the Sabbath. And I think there's something, not to be too weird metaphysically on you or anything, but I do think there's something to the cycles and rhythm on this planet that has to do with resting on the 7th day. I think everything was designed from creation to need this rest cycle, and I think the day is important. I think that 7th day, there's something to it. There's something beyond what we understand, but there is something to resting on that 7th day.
Right. So, and that's excellent, because we're talking about how we grew up specifically, worshiping on a specific day, right? So this is part of my walk. How did I get to where I'm at today, understanding what I do understand? And I don't claim to know it all. I'm just walking through the journey, because it's not really the destination, it's the journey that we go through that really matters, and how we implement what we learn. So one of the first things that I talked to you about already was the fact that, when Yahushua said, I come to fulfill the Torah, which is basically the way I should be living.
Instructions for life. I mean,
right.
I believe I've read that before, or heard someone say that the Torah is basic instructions for life.
Yeah, and I just try to stay away from the word the law, because the law in our mindset, now we put in our filters, right? We have today's filters. The law means don't break the law.
Well, all of us probably go back to a time when the law has pulled you over for a ticket, and it's been very uncomfortable.
Yeah, I just had one of those instances where the law gave me a ticket, and I went to fight it and lost.
Oh, no.
Then I had to pay twice as much. But,
The man got you down.
Yeah, the man got me down. But, hey, it's our right to go do that, so I decided to go do it. I lost, but it was a good experience. So what was I talking about?
We were talking about the Torah.
Yeah, okay, you got me sidetracked on the law there. So one of the things that I looked at, okay, so if he came to fulfill the law, the Torah, what was he talking about? So as a whole, one of the things you got to realize, or all of us must come to the realization, is that, what we call the New Testament was not written when Yahushua was alive.
Right, they didn't have it. It's not like the early disciples were like, hang on, let's go see what Matthew says.
Yeah, hey, Paul, you said something on Paul, on Matthew, whatever, verse and chapter and verse. It's like, it wasn't there. So you got to remember, so when Yahushua said, I have come to fulfill the Torah, the way you should live, and I'm going to have to exemplify and live by example, then you have to go back to what he was living and what he was, quoting. When he tells, the Satan, he tells him, it is written. Well, he wasn't quoting John or Matthew. He was quoting scripture from the Torah, okay, and the prophets, and all of this information that we, as I guess believers in today's world, really don't even take into account. And I think that's the biggest issue that we got to remember. And when you come to that realization, then you have a decision to make. Are you going to follow what man is telling you, or are you going to follow what the scripture is telling you? This is where it's meant by rightly divine the scripture.
Right. Well, and that's a good point. Yeshua didn't have the New Testament. He doesn't quote from the New Testament. It wasn't even really on his mind, and he helped write this thing. I mean, this is, this is something that definitely was near and dear to his heart, and he fully understand. He was the Word made flesh, and it tells us that. I guess that is in John, but we know that he was the flesh version of the Word.
Yeah, so this is important, and this is one of my understandings of that particular concept, is when Yahuwah speaks something into being, he uses his words, right? So he said, in the beginning, there was what? Heaven and earth, right? Mm-hmm. So he says, and then let there be light.
Oh yeah,
He said it.
And the earth was formless and void.
Yeah.
And he at some point even says, "Earth, grow grass." And I just get this picture in my mind of there was just grass.
Right. So if you think about that concept as far as the word goes, now when in Revelation it talks about when the second coming and he's sitting on the horse and he has a sharp two-edged sword that comes out of his mouth. That is specifically the word of Yahuwah, which cuts like a two-edged sword to the bone.
Dividing marrow.
Exactly. So, take that into account when you kind of considering what does it mean to live in Torah. And then when you really think about it and you understand the different translations, it's not a law that that you have to follow because in the same connotation that we see a law today, it was a way of life to give you blessings or to give you curses. If you followed it, then you give blessings. If you didn't follow them, then you were cursed. It's like
just natural consequences. I mean, just look at the stuff about eating blood, and he very specifically says don't drink blood, and there's just so many of the commands that we read, and many people just read over them in Deuteronomy or Leviticus, or just skipped those sections like blah 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 blah. I don't want to read that. Mm-hmm. And I definitely was that way for a long time until I realized, he's very specific on these things, and all of it is for our benefit. If we don't do those things, we're not going to get sick as often, and all the cleanliness things that he did and established about not being around dead things. And then, we even see it during the Black Death or the bubonic plague in Europe, that the Jews, they were keeping a lot of these dietary and cleanliness rules, and they were healthier. They weren't getting the plague, and that's from my understanding, what I've read, that's one of the reasons that you see so much early hatred in Europe to the Jews, because all the other people saw, they're all dying, and this one group of people seemed to be more immune to the Black Death and the plague and all that, and it was because they were more hygienic, because they followed the blessings.
So why? Well, let me finish my thought here in regards to the law, and then I want to address that topic too, because so according to certain research things that I've done, like for example the ancient Hebrew Research Center, they were talking about the Torah is not law, which is what I've been trying to kind of communicate here today, right? But it also talks about what is the Hebraic definition of Torah? And basically, I'm going to read it verbatim here for you. So it's a set of instructions from the Father to his children. Violations of these instructions are disciplined in order to foster obedience and train his children. Notice how the word Torah is translated in the New International Version of this on the following passages. For example, listen to my son, your father instructions, and do not forsake your mother in teaching. Torah, in Proverbs 1:8. My son, do not forget my teaching, Torah, but keep commandments in your hearts. So Proverbs, that's Proverbs 3:1. So instead of mother's teaching, or instead of the word Torah, they substitute teaching and instead of Torah. Okay, so it's a set of instructions is what we're trying to translate here, and if you follow them, you're gonna be blessed. Now, going back to a couple of things that we started talking in the beginning, communion and Sunday and stuff like that. One of the things that I realized quickly and by doing research is the fact that I, as a believer, and this is my interpretation and my belief, should not be worshiping on Sunday.
Right.
Okay? And people are going to say, well,
do the research. See what the day, what's the day named after.
Right. So, and then also, so it's basically, it's the day of the sun god. That's why it's called Sunday. Okay? And it was basically changed by Catholic tradition and Catholic edict, which basically means a commandment, right?
Basically trying to mesh what they saw the Romans doing, basically, and trying to kind of put it all together in this nice little package. While you guys are here and you're already coming doing this pagan thing, let's kind of mesh it with this, and we're gonna justify it because we say it's okay.
Right. And there's so many different things that I've learned through research, and this is one of the things that we do not want you to just sit there and listen to us and take it verbatim. We want you guys to do the research, because it's like in anything in life. Unless you do it, you don't learn it. Unless you go through the experience, it's not going to change you. If you don't get off that pew and you don't get engaged by reading and researching, you're not going to learn. You're not going to get to the meat. You're going to continue to do milk, and then you're going to be doing the same thing over and over and over, but expecting different results. Well, guess what? That's the definition of insanity. And sometimes we could seem a little crazy because we keep doing the same things and then expecting different results. So how did I come to that revelation? Well, I looked at the source. So according to Catholic writings, okay, this is what is said on this particular writing, and this is back in September of 1923. Sunday is our mark of authority. The church is above the Bible. Now, think about that statement. Okay, we're saying that Yahuwah, the scriptures are a instruction from the Almighty Elohim, Yahuwah. right?
Right.
And here is man telling us that their understanding and their belief and their dogma and their traditions are above the scripture. They're telling you, the listener, that they're above Yahuwah, above your, if you want to use the term God, above your God. Mm-hmm. Okay? And this, for example, in this transference of Sabbath observant is our proof of that fact. That's the Catholic Record of London, Ontario, September 1, 1923. Think about what I just finished reading to you. They're saying that this particular understanding is above Scripture, and this is why we changed it. We can do that because we're above Scripture, above God. If that doesn't really wake you up, I'm not sure anything else will. But you have to do the research. You have to be the one searching it out. Okay? And listen further. Okay, there's another piece of scripture, research that I found, which I want to read to you today. And this directly addresses us as what we would call Protestant believers, because through the Reformation, the Protestant movement came about. So Protestants, listen to this. This is what the Catholic Church says about you. Protestants accept Sunday rather than Saturday as the day of public worship after the Catholic Church made the change. But the Protestant mindset does not seem to realize that. Why? Because you're sitting in the pews not being engaged. And you're not...
Just like I was, falling asleep.
Falling asleep, exactly. And observing Sunday, they're accepting the authority of the spokesman of the church, the Pope. Our Sunday visitor, February 5th, 1950. This is Catholic writings about what we are supposed to be observing. Now, the question I asked myself when I read that is like, who am I going to follow? Am I going to follow man's traditions and dogmas from a specific group? Or am I going to search out the scripture, have Yahuwah speak to me, and then share his knowledge with me, and then tell me what I need to be doing to basically follow in the right way?
Right, basically go to the source, or do we want to go to what someone else said about the source?
Yeah. So, and that's what when I was in seminary, we discussed that I was in seminary, right? That's exactly, we rarely read the scripture. It was always other people's opinion about scripture. And through my research, I found out that the original seminaries in our nation were established by the Rockefeller Foundation, who is a known Satanist.
Right.
So I want you to put that into your little research bucket, because you have to do the research to figure out exactly where all this information is coming from.
Yeah, and you do need to research people. This is a rabbit trail about Rockefeller, but there's a guy named James Corbett on YouTube, and he's done a really good documentary about Big Oil and Rockefeller. And, it's crazy when you watch some of those things and see what that family was about and who they are, and kind of where it explains a lot of why do we see the crazy things in our world we see today. But I guess, how do we sum it up from here? Well, when you were talking, I had this memory of the movie Cars. And in the movie Cars, I believe it was the first one, you've got a semi driver, and he's going across country to take Lightning McQueen or something. I don't remember. And these other little Fast and Furious cars come up next to him, and he's falling asleep. And they're like, "Dude, we got a nodder!" And they try to they're moving him around on the road, and the semi's falling asleep as he goes. When so many people have fallen asleep on the road. Mm-hmm.
And they're an automatic pilot.
That's right. And we want to wake you up.
I mean, think about this. How many times have you got on the highway and you got to go somewhere, but you end up going towards work, right? You're like, wait a minute, what am I here?
I thought I was the only one that did that.
No, that happens to me all the time. I'm on the road. It's like, I got to go do an errand for the wife, and I'm on the road, and it's like, where the heck am I going? And then I have to take my wife says I'm always taking the scenic route because what's going around the long way.
And then you try to figure out a way to play it off, I meant to go this way. But it just she never buys it.
Right.
Or the Keely all the time will go, remember, we're going here? Oh, yeah, I got that.
Yeah, I was going there. I was just taking the scenic route. Yeah. So, but anyway, so
But we are creatures of habit, and we tend to do what we know.
exactly. So when we're talking about being the Torah being fulfilled, I also want to highlight the fact that we have to go back to see what the Torah says. The Ten Commandments are critical for us to understand them. It says keep the Sabbath holy. In Scripture, you will not find anywhere, and I challenge anybody to just listen to this, where it is identified where in Scripture that the Sabbath was changed to any other day but the original date of Saturday.
Well, and if it was important, don't we think that Yeshua, when he was on earth, would have been like, hey guys, remember that Saturday thing? We're not doing that anymore. We're now doing Sunday.
Yeah.
I think he would have said it.
Right. Yeah. I mean, we've read some of these books in Deuteronomy and Exodus and everything, right? And there is precise instructions about everything, and you think about, okay, why such detail? Well, I was just I just had my son was out cutting the grass, right? And I said, okay, Chris, you gotta go cut the grass. And he said, okay, so he's gonna cut the grass. And he didn't do a good job the first day, so I said, okay, you got to come back again today and finish cutting the grass, because there's still a lot of areas that need to be cut. So I thought that was pretty specific instructions, right? I was like, cut the grass, not leave all this stuff all over the place and the
You have to go in like
pile
patterns and lines.
Yeah, exactly. So
Overlap.
and then because it's like when somebody messes up your hair, you got a big old sting sticking up in the back, and you're like, dang it, now I got to recut it, right? So this is what he did. Is we are such creatures that if we're not given specific instructions on how to do things, sometimes we don't do it how it's supposed to be. And as parents, don't we sometimes feel like, man, if it's got to be done right, I got to do it myself?
Exactly. Am I going to have to come down there and do this for you?
Exactly. And so these are instructions that Yahuwah has given us as our Father, that He wants us to follow, so that we may live in prosperity, that we may live in happiness, that we may be safe, and that we may walk in blessings. Does that make sense?
Sure, it does. Well, you got to. I kind of want to wrap up on this one. I went and looked up it's Mount Ebal and Mount Gerizim, and that was the mountain where they had to choose blessings on one side and curses on the other side. And so we just want to leave you with. We want you to choose blessings, and we want you to go research things and see for yourself and study. And anyway, is there anything else you want to add before we close out?
I just wanted to say that we're not here to judge anybody's observance. It's a personal decision that you have to make. But I challenge you.
And it's a process. It's a journey. You don't get here overnight.
Right.
It's difficult. It's mind shattering. It hurts your head sometimes.
Yeah, it's like mind jiu-jitsu sometimes. You're like, oh, dang it, what am I doing that for? And it goes really against what we talked about, the normancy bias that we have, because we're doing the same thing over and over and over and over and over again, and it just becomes a habit. But really, what Yahuwah wants you to do is to be engaged with Him, know His desires for your life, and then once you find the truth, okay, then the responsibility really relies on your shoulders, because then you have to make a decision, right? You have to make a decision whether you're going to follow what you've been taught, which may be wrong and against Scripture, and therefore against Yahuwah, or you're going to continue to follow man's traditions and then be in rebellion against Yahuwah. And how do you think that's going to go? Do you really believe that Yahuwah is who He is? Do you really believe that He's the Almighty, the Elohim, the one who sets the universe in motion, the one who spoke the creation into being, and the one that said, "Let there be light"? Do you believe that He exists? And if you do, then you have to teshuvah. You have to return to His ways and depart from this world system that we're in. Because that's one of the things that we want to wake you up from, is this world system that's really leading us astray.
That's good. All right. So don't be like the truck nodding off going down the road. I want you to be awake.
Pilot.
That's right. Well, thank you for listening, and stay tuned to our next episode. Signing off.
Hey, yo, DJ. What up? We got ourselves a nodder. Pretty music. Yo, Wingo, lane change, man. Oops, I missed. You going on vacation?
Pretty chill in here.
As always, thank you for listening. Please check out my blog at itsyahushua.wordpress.com. Also, send us an email, send us a comment at yeshua1600@gmail.com. We ask that you comment, like, subscribe, share on social media. Thank you.